as a product manager, it's very important to know what the user needs are. So once we identify the market segment we want to target, what these people need, how can we help them with our product or service. I felt that I lost touch with those users, and I didn't necessarily understand what the recurring themes were. And when that happens, you start prioritizing based on your gut. So when you do that, you introduce risk into your process. You made an assumption about what your users need, you build something on that assumption, and then if it doesn't happen to be right, you might have either a failed feature or you missed an opportunity. So I obviously built an Excel spreadsheet. I had an Airtable. I had some integrations I did with Zapier. So it's like trying to build a solution. Then I kind of spoke to a few other product managers I knew, and I said, how do you manage this process? And they kind of told me similar stories, ranging from, we don't do anything, we just kind of like get like a rough idea or rely on anecdotes, or they would have some kind of elaborate system that they built themselves. I would ask questions like, where's your customer feedback stored? What sources is it coming from? Which ones are most important? Which ones are highest volume? What do you do to analyze? Basically, based on this data, I deduced that the support in the growing companies, the support channel is the biggest by volume. So, and it only, like, the more successful you are, the faster it grows.
Yes.
So it was a natural choice for us, kind of thinking like, what are the top solutions for support, and let's integrate with them and use that as a starting point, and then grow from there. So we don't want to be focused on support forever. We want to do the top 5 or 10 systems, and then move on to top 5 survey systems, top 5 review systems. The process or the learning of how fundraising works started when I did my first angel round. At that time, this idea of raising funds at the early stage, having never done that before, felt like, who am I to raise funding? I don't know investors personally. A lot of the advice that comes from the US or podcasts like Y Combinator is like, just do your family and friends round. Unfortunately,
Sure.
I didn't have investors or people, those amounts of cash as friends or family. So for me, it was going to be external investors. I knew roughly how it works, but I didn't necessarily know how to take an investor that you never met before into someone who says, yeah, I'm going to invest in your company. So there were a few key people that helped me get the first introductions, and then that kind of got the ball rolling. So maybe my recommendation for founders fundraising is, don't be afraid to have conversations without having all those things figured out. But then, like, with each conversation, you should learn something about how the investor responded, to then take back and iterate your pitch. But I don't want to call it a pitch, because it's not really a pitch. It's always a conversation that has like modular bits of little stories there. For example, what a customer has done with your product, or the type of customer you acquired, or how they discovered you. All of those little things kind of answer various investor questions. But if they're part of a cohesive journey, then it's more interesting to listen to than a straightforward pitch, which is like point A, point B, point C. Investors obviously will ask more specific questions, but sometimes even speaking to founders or someone completely random in a meetup, that gives you that opportunity to practice. So the very first venture I started was an online store, essentially selling secondhand drums and cymbals and percussion. I also was kind of thinking, this business kind of doesn't scale. Either like I build a big warehouse and like kind of run like a shop, like a retail business. I started a few different ideas with my friends. The first one was a social network for the campus we were on. So we wanted to create a space where new students, especially freshers, could discover society events. And the Facebook groups didn't quite exist at that time. So we built this simple website which had society profiles, their events, allowed them to buy memberships, sell memberships, and manage them. And we launched with a big launch party because we thought we need to launch things. And like about 600 students came along for that, and we had prizes, and we had like free beer and pizza.
Sounds really fun.
And it was fun. I was like, wow, this is really stressful, but it's really cool at the same time. But then Facebook groups came along, and everyone was like, oh, but people are already on Facebook. Why would we use some kind of third-party website? Those experiences just layered one on top of each other. You know, some people hit it lucky the first time. They start the venture and then successfully sell it, and then they're a serial entrepreneur. Although, you know, I've tried a few ventures, I don't yet think of myself as having any kind of success on my belt. I just have a lot of different experiences of like touching things and seeing how they could go wrong or could go right. And I think that foundation allowed me to move further than any other venture with Prodsight because of those past experiences. If I was to try another startup in a few years, I'd probably do it even better in some way, you know. Finally, although the startup experiences I've done where it was like me or my friends working on it were helpful, the most helpful experience was actually joining the startup. Everything that I saw the founders do is now my reference point of what I should do. So if there's like a staff issue, how do they react? What do they do? If there's a morale issue, you know, how did they address that?